Morning, everybody. This is Jeff Apodaca. I thank you for joining us today on our campaign. Today we start an eight-week start for our campaign to discuss how we're going to turn New Mexico around. Today we're going to talk about jobs. We're going to talk about how we're going to create 225,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico. If I kind of look off a little bit, it's because I'm looking at a computer to see who's all coming on board. But let me tell you about New Mexico. I think we all know we're at the bottom. We're 50th in job creation. We're 50th in education. Aren't we all kind of tired of being at the bottom of all the good lists and the top of all the bad lists? And that's what's happened with some of our leaders that are trying to become governor now and want to turn the state. They want to turn the state and continue to do the status quo. We want to invest in New Mexico, create jobs, create opportunities for our kids and our young kids. Today, we have cut so many of our opportunities away for our kids. It's time we start investing in New Mexico. It's time we start investing in job creation and how we can change things. And that's what we're going to do today. So I want to do a town hall. I want to give, and I'm sorry about my voice today. I got a little bit of a cold, so I apologize on that. But let's talk a little bit about it. Since July, we've been talking about how we can create 225,000 new jobs. Since July, we have been talking about how we can invest in New Mexico and create opportunities for New Mexicans. And our opponents continue to talk about how we can't do things. I'm tired of talking, I'm tired of hearing what we can't do. It's time we start talking about what we can do. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we're going to create 225,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico. Now let's talk very quickly about how we got here. We know for a fact that over 500 years ago, our first economy was agriculture. Then we got into farming, ranching. We actually exported to Spain and to Europe. And in the early 1900s, what did we find here in New Mexico? We found oil and gas. We found mining, copper, silver, right? We became miners. Those were our industries. And over 100 years, those are our industries. And today, they're still almost 35% of our economy. But in the 50s, our political leaders did what was the right thing to do. They literally started taking our royalties from these mining and oil and gases and created these funds for us. As some people call them rainy day funds. But they're funds for us. They're funds for the future. And over 50 years, they have been generated over $23 billion. $23 billion that our state now sits on. And we invest everything outside our state. Now, you're going to hear from our competition how I want to rate our funds, how I want to spend and deplete our funds. It's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about investing in New Mexico to create jobs and opportunities. Let me give you an example. In the 50s and 60s, what did we start doing here in New Mexico? Aerospace, computers, nanotechnology, biotechnology, 3D imaging, LASIK, photonics. We have literally created hundreds of thousands of jobs and trillion-dollar economies for New Mexicans. For the United States. Every one of those industries was actually started and developed here, and we've allowed them to leave. Now, why have they left? They've left because we haven't invested in infrastructure. They've left because we haven't invested into New Mexicans to do those jobs, and they've left because we don't invest in them. And that's what we're going to change. So May 2nd, we started our campaign officially. And if you go back to our May 2nd announcements, it literally says we sit on $21.5 billion. Well, if you saw our Christmas campaign and you saw our commercials over the holidays, it now talks about $23 billion. Folks, we now have $23 billion in investment funds. In fact, our investment funds have grown $1.5 billion in the last 7 months. Why? We have talked about cutting education, cutting programs, cutting after-school programs, cutting trade skills. That's what we're going to change. So let's get into this right now. I appreciate everybody signing in today. And, and let's talk about jobs. This week we want to talk about jobs. So some people have told us that it's non-credible that we're going to be able to create 225,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, how we can do that. Now, here's number one. We have lost over 100,000 jobs in the state of New Mexico in the last 10 years. In fact, some people say we've lost almost 150 to 180,000 jobs. We know since 2010, our unemployment has gone from 4.8 to 6.7% unemployment. We actually have the highest unemployment in the country. And we continue to cut. So we're going to invest. We're going to invest in job creation. We're going to invest in opportunities for jobs and opportunities for New Mexicans. And let me tell you how we're going to do it. First, yes, we are going to move $1 billion. We're going to move $1 billion of our $23 billion back into New Mexico. And we're going to invest into small business loans. We're going to create 2.5% debt finance loans for small businesses. Folks, 95% of our economy is small business. 95% of our economy is small business. We do nothing to help small business grow. In fact, what we do is we penalize them. We penalize them with taxes. We penalize them with opportunities. So we're going to basically invest $1 billion program into small debt financing. So all we're going to do is move $1 billion of the $23 billion back into New Mexico and create opportunities for small business. 95% of our economy is small business. That's 152,000 small businesses in the state of New Mexico that employ over 400,000 New Mexicans. By doing that, the number one issue in our state of New Mexico is that we have no private capital that comes into New Mexico. Very little capital. We need private capital to come and invest with us. And they literally tell us, if we don't invest in ourselves, why are we going to invest with you? So by investing $1 billion into New Mexico small business, we will be able to grow the economy, grow our own, and grow our strength. Now, by doing this, our calculation shows that over 50% of those small businesses will use that capital to expand and grow small businesses. And we're estimating that each business would only hire just one person. And those people would generate 75,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico within the first 12 to 18 months of our administration. Trade skills. In 2015 and 2016, we actually subcontracted over 40,000 jobs in the trade skills outside the state of New Mexico. And we all know this. We all see it. We see construction sites. We see sites around the state for the last year with Arizona, Texas, Colorado license plates. We have stopped training our youth and our middle schools and our high school kids and our young people for trade skills. In fact, we have moved millions of dollars from the trade skill programs into higher education. Excuse me, people. Let me drink a little bit. We're going to change that. We're going to bring back trade skills, and we're going to work with our unions and brothers and sisters and roll in our apprentice programs into our high schools and into community colleges and start training our kids for pathways within the trade skills. And when we do that, within a 2 to 6 year period, we will create another 40 to 45,000 jobs within trade skills that we literally subcontract outside our state just 2 years ago. Now, startups. We know we've talked about startups in the past. And folks, we talked about the industries we started for the country. We continually create startups here in New Mexico every day. In fact, I'm on the Innovate ABQ board in Albuquerque. STC, one of the tech transfers out of UNM, they do a great job. In fact, last year, over 12 companies started out of tech transfer out of the University of New Mexico. Great job. 10 have left the state, 2 are still here. Now, why did they leave? Again, we haven't invested into infrastructure. We haven't invested into the training of New Mexicans, and we don't invest in those companies to keep them here, like other states do. So we know by investing into startups, we can literally create another 25 to 30,000 jobs over a 4 to 6 year period. Everybody does it around our state, around our country. That's what we're going to do. We've talked about oil and gas. We've talked about renewables. We have to start investing together in renewables and oil and gas for a better New Mexican. I have talked to oil and gas industries. I have talked to the renewable energies. Everybody wants to invest together. So we have to collaborate together and work together and start investing into new energies and new renewable energies. And in today's world, couldn't have done this probably 10 years ago, but in today's world, we literally can create cluster solar fields and wind fields and create energy at 4 cents a kilowatt. Now, I tell my staff, I tell my friends, you might have heard me say this, I have no idea what a kilowatt means. But guess what? We can literally sell it to California, Arizona, to our neighboring states, specifically in demand months, for 11 to 18 cents a kilowatt. So we can make 60 to 80% return on our investments. Folks, that's smart for New Mexico. And that's what we need to do. We have plans to clean up our water. We have plans to work with New Mexico businesses to clean up our water and invest into cleanup around our state, both private and public investments. By doing so, we're going to create another 20 to 25,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico. And yes, that might take us 2 to 6 years, but we have a plan for that. We know healthcare. We know healthcare is a major issue. We're short 300 doctors in our state. We're short 3,200 nurses. We're short 1,600 physician assistants. And by investing just a few $1 million with one of the best universities in the country in medical research, the University of New Mexico, we can literally create another 10,000 jobs in telemedicine and within the health industry by just creating 300 more doctors in our state, 3,200 more nurses, and 1,600 more physician assistants. We all know, specifically in our rural communities, that we're short medical issues. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to work with the University of New Mexico, and we're going to roll out more residency programs. We can create over 100 new residency programs a year and generate almost 100 more doctors staying in our state by year 2 to 4. And we need to recruit more doctors. Every doctor we create in your community, we literally bring $1.8 billion of economic growth to that community. Every doctor we bring into your community, we create 3 to 6 new jobs. Same with nurses and physician assistants. We need to invest into New Mexicans. They're going to create more nurses and more physician assistants so we can get them in rural communities. And yes, folks, between the private and public sector, we need to invest together in telemedicine. Telemedicine can literally solve some of our health issues and have rural communities see doctors via telemedicine immediately. Again, talking about opportunities. And by doing that, we're looking at 10,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico. So, let's keep going. Education. We're going to talk more about our educational plan in weeks to come, but when you start looking at education and you start looking at moving millions of dollars that we literally send out of state, and if we start focusing back into our communities, back into recruiting more teachers, paying teachers better, paying the school support better, and create more opportunities and expand our schools and our after-school programs, literally within education, within 2 to 4 years, we will create another 10,000 new jobs for the state of New Mexico. Now, tourism. We know tourism is about 10%. Tourism is actually doing very well. All we want to do is start promoting our own tourism to our own New Mexicans. Folks, 60% of New Mexicans literally take 3 to 4 vacation trips a year outside the state of New Mexico. If we just kept New Mexican families in New Mexico half the time, do you know we would generate almost $600 million of more tax revenue in our state? Or more economic growth in our state? Over $600 million. Improving New Mexico's economy. Helping within tourism, stuff like that. So those are things we're going to do. The last 3 things I want to talk about real quick is our veterans. We have over 220 veterans in our state. 65%, I've been told, are not claiming their benefits. We will create outreach and community outreach programs with our veterans programs and the Small Business Administration. We will reach out to our veterans and do 3 things. 1, make sure they're getting their benefits. Number 2, expand and cover their health care with telemedicine and more doctors in our state. But number 3, we literally have to create investment programs, job training, and skill training for our veterans. Over 15,000 of our New Mexico businesses are small businesses from veterans. And if we partner with the Small Business Administration, literally our federal government has a program for our veterans that they can start businesses up to $500,000 loans, 90% guaranteed. Folks, by just working with our veterans, we can literally generate almost $20 million of economic growth. And that's a good thing for our veterans. So that's another program we're going to do. Film and television. No matter what you say, film and television, and yes, maybe I'm a little biased. I spent 32 years in the media business, building companies, turning companies around. But folks, it's over 6,000 jobs in the state of New Mexico. And it's an economy that continues to drive and we continue to grow. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the cap. Literally, the film and television business literally disappears in our state come usually September, October, because we've reached those caps. So our competition is going to talk about how let's just get rid of the cap or raise the cap. We need to eliminate the cap and make smart decisions based on what's going to grow the economy. And that's an opportunity for us. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to create and fund an international film school. We've been talking about this for almost a year now. And the reason I say international film school, because we're going to open it up to everybody, but we're going to target Hispanic and Native American kids, not only in New Mexico, but in the United States and in Mexico and in Spain. We need to recruit more people to New Mexico. And we're going to train New Mexicans for below the line, which are the jobs that are on the set. But we also have to train our kids for above the line opportunities. And that's also creating funding for them with small loan programs that we're going to do. By doing that, we're now creating a pipeline of the next generation of Hispanic, Native American, guess what, folks? Storytellers that we know the industry's looking for. I want New Mexico to be the pipeline of the next generation of minorities and Hispanics and Native American storytelling, and we want to be a pipeline for New Mexicans to work in this industry. This is an industry that, I'm telling you, I spent 32 years in it. This is an industry that creates opportunities across the board. And it's not just film and television production jobs. It's catering jobs. It's hotel jobs. It's service-oriented jobs. The accelerated jobs outside that are unbelievable for the state of New Mexico. Now let's talk about hemp and cannabis. Some of my competition is staying away from the conversation. I don't think we should. Our campaign was the first one to basically say we would legalize cannabis for recreational. We know the medical benefits. Now, my story goes back, and I'll make it quickly before we open up to questions. My story goes back to 1978. If you don't know this, New Mexico was actually the first state to have medical marijuana. 1978. Some governor named Jerry Apodaca, yes, my father, signed it into law. Never knowing 2 years later his own son would use medical marijuana to get me through chemotherapy. Some may know the story, but I literally had cancer 38 years ago. Went through 2 years of chemotherapy and radiation. The pills and the shots they gave me for nausea for the chemotherapy just didn't work. We know the medical benefits of medical marijuana. We know the benefits of hemp. Not only manufacturing and the medical benefits, but the agricultural opportunities. Folks, this industry uses 75% less water, and the experts are telling us within the hemp production, we can literally get 3 to 4 productions a year in the state of New Mexico. We literally manufacture hemp products every day in the state of New Mexico, but we're not allowed to grow it here. Just doesn't make sense. So we're going to invest, and we're going to push for hemp and cannabis expansion between medical, recreational, and hemp production. Folks, when we do that, and I've talked to the experts about it, when we do that, within 4 years, we're looking at another 32,000 jobs in the state of New Mexico and an additional $200 million of tax revenue. So look, we have just gone over a list of 10 different areas that we can focus in on, our strengths, and develop over 225,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico. By doing that, with our economic-based jobs and service-oriented based jobs, folks, we will generate over $1.8 billion of additional tax revenue for our state, generating by year 6 over $800 million surpluses, so our legislators can budget more for your schools, for your first responders, for our communities and our rural communities. It's about creating jobs. It's about investing into ourselves. And that's what we're going to do. Now, I've been probably talking now for almost 19, 20 minutes, and you're going to love, I'm not a career politician, but I'm starting to get where I like talking a lot, right? So I wanted to open up to questions. Now, look, we asked a bunch of questions before, and I hope I'm trying to monitor on my computer, so I'm hoping I can kind of see some of the questions pop up. So feel free to throw in some of your questions right now. But the first question we're getting, and we got some early, and we're taking a look at this, but the number one question we got is, Jeff, we have $23 billion. You have a columnist in Santa Fe, New Mexican, who called out you and Sam Donaldson. You have a competitor of ours who called our plan non-credible And you literally have people say, how can you constitutionally take that? Folks, I have not said one time, I'm going to make this very, very clear to you. We have not said one time we are going to take any money outside of these funds. The governor has the authority to appoint the State Investment Council. The State Investment Council manages the $23 billion. All we're going to do is have the State Investment Council take $1 billion of your money and invest it right back in New Mexico at 2.5% interest low debt finance loans. So yes, on that $1 billion, we might only make 2.5% on our return instead of 6% or 8% in Wall Street. But folks, the job creation and the tax revenue that will benefit the state, I think it's best to do the 2.5% versus the 6%. So don't tell me what we can or cannot do. And that's what my competition is going to tell you, that it's not doable. So yes, we can literally work with the State Investment Council, the SIC, go look it up, go Google it, and we can ask them to invest $1 billion into New Mexico, to New Mexico industries. That's doable today. Now, one of the funds is called the Severance Fund. And the Severance Fund, by state statute, by state law, we can take 9% of that fund and invest it into New Mexico technologies, New Mexico startups. We can invest it into cybersecurity, into biotechnology research. We can invest it into New Mexico tech transfer jobs, Los Alamos tech transfer jobs. We can do that today. The way we do it today, we've invested under the last 10 years less than $5 million of your $5 billion of that fund. So we're going to take the max, which is $420 million. And we're going to take $420 million and we're literally going to generate investment funds for New Mexico technology and startups. Now, we're going to partner with private investment funds also and literally create $840 million of investment funds for new technology and startups to keep those companies here. And yes, we will have to work with the state legislators to basically take capital outlay dollars and make sure we're investing in infrastructure. And we're going to make sure we're training New Mexicans for those jobs that we're going to be creating over the next 10 years. So it's doable. So my point is, we can continue going down the same route, the same way, and end up at 50th, or we can start taking some of our dollars and start investing back into New Mexicans and New Mexico in job training, infrastructure, and technology transfer. By doing that, that's how we get the ball rolling. That's how we turn New Mexico around. So yes, it is possible to invest into New Mexico businesses without having to do a constitutional change. And I have talked to lawyers, I have talked to legislators, and there's a lot of people within the system that are supporting us on this. So it's about having a governor that has the right leadership and the right ideas to do this. So that's what we're going to do. So that's our first question. So I hope I answered the question, and if I haven't, ask another question. Folks, I can't see where the questions are coming up, by the way. I can't see if there's any. Scroll down. I'm trying to look at the questions real quick. Anyway, the second question we got was, how do we do clean energy and renewable energies? Well, we kind of talked a little bit about it. Clean energy and renewables. Let's talk about that. We live in a state that we're ranked second in the country for renewable energy capabilities, but we're ranked 48th in production. Now, I've talked to oil and gas, I've talked to other people, and there's opportunities that we can literally invest into. And it's time we start investing into renewable energies. Now, we're going to continue investing with our oil and gas brothers and sisters to drill and to clean our water and to clean our methane leaks together. It's an opportunity. And not only that, but if we can do that, not only are we cleaning up methane leaks, but we're creating more tax revenue for our state. We're creating more tax revenue for our country, right? And so, sorry, folks, I just got another question. So we can basically look at tax revenues based on cleaning up our oil and gas. We can also invest into renewable energies by cleaning by new renewable energies, sun and wind. Now, let me tell you, we probably couldn't have done this 10 years ago, and we talked about it earlier. But by investing in renewable energies and creating solar fields, look, I'm not worried about powering the building we're in today or powering your house. That's going to happen naturally. What we're going to do is we're going to invest into solar cluster fields with the private sector, with our federal government and our state funds, and with industries. And we're going to create solar cluster fields, creating construction jobs and new technology jobs. But more importantly, we're going to create new revenue streams for our state. I said earlier, instead of generating, we need to generate additional revenue. So in today's market, we can literally generate renewable energies at 4 cents a kilowatt and sell it to other states at 11 to 12 cents a kilowatt. Yes, we're going to use those powers to power New Mexico, absolutely. But we can generate so much renewable energy, specifically during demand months that California, Arizona, and them need. We can literally invest and create more tax revenue for our state. So that's what we're going to do. Let me look at some other questions here. I got a question from the rural communities, broadband, from B. I got a question from broadband. Thanks, B, for the question. That is very important. In fact, one of the things that we're talking about is infrastructure. We're talking about powering our infrastructure and reinvesting in our infrastructure. Folks, half of our state, our rural communities, have no broadband, no high-speed internet. Now, part of our plan is to train New Mexicans for telecommuting jobs. Now, if you don't know what a telecommuting job means you can literally live in Silver. You can literally live in Chama and work for companies in Colorado, California, outside our state. The average job of those jobs are about $83,000 a year. And by the way, half the jobs for 30, 35 and under are those type of jobs. In fact, I have small businesses in New Mexico all the time that are hiring people outside our state because we haven't trained our people. So one thing we're going to do as part of our high school programs and part of our community programs is train our kids within coding and train our kids within programs about that. But we're also going to invest into our infrastructure and create broadband across the state. Now let me tell you, what I have learned in the last year campaigning, which is kind of sinful, is because some of our political leaders, our governor and some of our political leaders, because our governor has not communicated with our federal leaders, that we have literally passed on about $1 billion in federal grants for infrastructure. And about $400 million of that has been for broadband expansion. So that's sinful, just because some of our political leaders will not communicate with each other. I'm going to tell you right now, I have no problem communicating. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. We are going to collaborate and work together, and we are going to invest $400 million of capital outlay into infrastructure, partly broadband, but we can literally go and get $1 billion of federal funding to help us with this. And that's something we haven't done over the last 8 years because our governor literally will not talk to our Democratic leaders. And you have my word as governor, I'm not going to worry about if they're Democrat or Republican. I'm going to worry about working together for you. I'm going to worry about working together to make sure our kids have broadband. Let me tell you a story. A dear friend of mine is trying to help out Native Americans, and they literally went in a year ago and went and trained people in Grants, New Mexico for these type of jobs. Our schools aren't prepared for it. We need to help them with that. But these gentlemen went in and trained literally 10 people in New Mexico in Grants for these type of jobs. And after they went through the process, guess what? Those 10 Native Americans, Hispanic kids in Grants, New Mexico could not get any jobs outside the state because they didn't realize they didn't have broadband. So now these gentlemen, these friends of mine, are actually trying to create co-working spaces in Grants with high-speed broadband so they can make sure that New Mexico kids, that kids in Grants, New Mexico, have a co-working space so they can go get those type of jobs. Those are the things we're talking about. The private sector is willing to help us. We just need to invest into an infrastructure that the private sector will literally come in and invest with us and create co-working and incubating spots. It's happening in some of our bigger cities. We need to do this across the board for all our states, for all our rural communities. Let me look at another question real quick. You just clicked off it. I saw a question from Las Vegas. I didn't see it. My computer just went down. Gotta love technology, folks. Give me a second. I'm reading the question right now. I'm getting a question from Daniel in Las Vegas about Las Vegas, how the population is decreasing at a fast rate. In fact, Daniel, I think I'm right on this. I think your population has dropped almost 22%. I think Las Vegas has lost about 3,000 people. And so, again, we need to invest into our rural communities. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to create we've created a master plan. Back in the 70s and 80s, by the way, we actually had a planning commission at a state level that we could literally plan a state plan. Somehow, some way, that got pushed aside or got disbanded, and now our counties, and that's one of our issues we have. So we, in Las Vegas is a perfect example. We're going to look at each county. We're going to work with each county and each economic development. We're going to create a master plan for our state. And then we're going to look at Las Vegas. And you look right there at Highlands University. Highlands University literally has a great nursing program. We need more nurses, teachers, more arts, and they also have a great art program that we can literally help train some of these kids at Highlands and some of these kids in Las Vegas for those type of jobs that we talked about in film and television. So those are opportunities. We know the rural communities, also part of it is in agriculture. In those type of areas, we can create jobs in agriculture. Now, let me give you an example. Northern New Mexico specifically, our agriculture is doing pretty good in some other parts of the state. But Northern New Mexico and Central New Mexico specifically, we have literally splintered our land so bad that we're having difficulties growing within agriculture. And now we have youth that are leaving the industry. So now the average age in agriculture is literally about 65 years of age. But there is a push for younger people that want to get in agriculture, but we got to learn how to do it. So our proposal is, we look at it and we talk about three things. We talk about apples, we talk about hops, and we talk about hemp and cannabis. Now, I'm not saying those are the co-ops we're going to create, but I think they're great ideas. So let me talk about that. And Vegas and the northern communities play right into this, how we can create rural communities, create distribution jobs, manufacturing jobs, along with some of the other things we're talking about. Let's talk about apples. In northern New Mexico in the 70s, New Mexico was one of the top producers of apples in the country. Today, we produce less than 0.5% of the apples in the country, and our apple growers have a difficult time selling our apples to our local industries and outside our state. In fact, the word exporting is almost like a word that is never used. So we want to invest into agriculture, into apples, into fruits, and grow more into that agriculture industry, creating more opportunities. Now we talk about that. Now let's talk about hops. We can talk about barley too. You can combine the two. But bottom line is, folks, you take healthcare out of our state. The fastest growing industry in our state are breweries, right? We all know that. And I've only talked to 6 brewers. But when you start talking to the brewmasters, you start talking to the brew owners, they literally buy our hops and our barley from where? Colorado, Idaho, Kansas, Oregon. Folks, guess what grows naturally up north in northern New Mexico? Hops. And I've been told 5 of the different type of hops you can literally brew beers with. So we literally have to, we literally just have to invest with the private sector and create co-ops at our strengths, hops and barley. We are now ranked, Albuquerque and some of our breweries are now ranked one of the top 10 places in the country. So not only can we promote our beers, our breweries, but we can also expand and export. Again, we have to start looking at stop cutting things and start investing and expanding things. And in fact, it goes back to my small business conversation, we penalize small business. We literally have to work with these small businesses to help them expand and help them grow. And so that's what we want to do. So these are little examples. And when you look at hemp and cannabis, we talked about it earlier. Hemp actually produces or uses 75% less water in those opportunities. So again, it's opportunities that we can look at and use less water, create co-ops. We, strengthen numbers, right? That's you're going to hear that from me a lot. Strengthen numbers. I don't know if it's my old athletic days or what, but strengthen numbers. And yes, we're going to collaborate with our Native Americans. We're going to collaborate with our pueblos and our tribes. We're going to collaborate with our endowments. We're going to collaborate with our businesses. Folks, it's time we start collaborating together. This us against them's not working. We're ranked 50th in everything. So we have to start doing that, and I think that's one of the questions that, and I hope I answered your question, Daniel. Do we have, I think we have time for one more question. I think we'll take one more question. Do we have one more question?
Veteran.
What was the veteran question?
Veteran, clarifying the numbers for veterans.
One of the questions was clarifying the numbers for veterans. Now, I'm getting this from the Veteran Administration. So the numbers I've looked at is we have over 220,000 veterans in the state of New Mexico. And over 15,000 of them own small businesses. And so, folks, let me tell you, and this is a proven fact about our vets. New Mexico per capita, we're one of the highest states with our veterans. Our veterans serve better than any other state per capita in the country. We now have 220,000 veterans. It's time we start taking care of our veterans. And I have been told by the Veterans Administration, I have been told by veterans organizations that over 65% of our veterans do not claim their benefits. Now, for whatever reason, they're not. Now, I'm not judging that. For whatever reason, I'm not saying anybody's doing a bad job. I'm saying for whatever reason, they're not. So I've talked to some of the veteran programs, and it's time we start taking care of our veterans. So we're going to go in and we're going to create community outreach programs for our veterans. And by that, we're going to help them get benefits that they deserve. And then the Veterans Programs has an educational plan that they can literally go get trade skills. They can literally go to high school, go to college, go to community college. There are literally federal programs to help us educate and train our veterans for the job skills today. We can also work with them on agriculture and areas like that, and that's also good for their therapy. Then we're going to look at local preferences. We haven't talked about this in small business, but one of the small business things we're going to do is look at local preference. On average today, 35% of our small businesses get about 35% of our state and federal contracts. Now, my goal is to get it, how do we get it to 100%, but how do we get it to 60, 65% in the first 2 years of our administration? Now, yes, Sandia Labs is doing a great job working with us even more, and they've grown it dramatically. We can do it with the labs, we can do it with our universities, we can do it with our small businesses. But for our cities and states to be using IT companies or tech companies outside the state when they're literally 5 blocks away, there are New Mexico-based tech companies that can do the same job. Folks, it's time we start looking at preferences. Now, going back to veterans, we need to train our veterans to help start more businesses and get more businesses and have them get some of those contracts. Folks, by federal agreement or by federal law, our veterans can get up to 3% of our federal contracts. Today, we get about 0.5%. So if we can help veterans get mentoring, training, and finance to start more businesses, and the veterans can go after some of those contracts, and we can get it to 3%, we're looking at another $20 to $60 million of economic growth for our state. So again, it just goes back to what we can do and what we can't do. Now look, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. We'll keep these live, or we'll keep these up on our Facebook page. So if you missed it, you can go back and look at it today. I hope I answered everybody's questions. If we didn't, please send us an email, sign up for our campaign, and I'll respond to you via email. We will be doing this every Tuesday for the next 8 weeks. This is our first one. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll do another one next week, and next week I believe we're going to be discussing education. But I think, just to summarize, yes, folks, we have $23 billion. Yes, folks, we're the third largest investment funds in the country. And our neighboring states have $550 million, and they have unbelievable economies and jobs that are expanding. Our regional states, our country has seen record-breaking growth in the last 10 years, and we've actually gone backwards. So I'm tired of my competition running for governor who wants to run our state. I'm tired of her saying what we can't do. I want you to start asking these other people we're running against, what can you do for us? Apodaca is going to create 225,000 new jobs for you. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take $1 billion and invest it back in New Mexico for small businesses. We're going to take $420 million and invest it into technologies in New Mexico businesses. And we're going to move 8% of PED's budget and start educating our kids, because I'm tired of being 50th. And you can call me angry. You can call me passionate. You can call me whatever you want to call me. I'm tired of us being at the bottom. I'm tired of people talking about what we can't do. So I ask you for your support. Because let me tell you, folks, this is the turning point. 2018 will be the turning point for New Mexico. If we continue to go down the same path and elect the same political leader over and over, where's New Mexico going to be in 10 years? I have twin boys that are 9. I'm more worried about our children and our kids' futures and our grandkids' futures than anything else. We have a 46% high school dropout rate in the state of New Mexico. Our kids see no opportunities. This is it. This is your moment. This is the turning point. There's not many times in the world that this happens to anybody. So, folks, I ask you to follow our campaign, because if we don't change, if we don't make big changes today, New Mexico may never, ever get out of 50th. And I don't believe we can do that. I believe we can invest in New Mexico. I believe we can create 225,000 new jobs. I believe in you, and I hope you believe in me, and follow our campaign on our Facebook page or on Apple18.com. Because, yes, we need delegates, we need signatures, and we need to raise money. Because once people see our plan, they know we can turn New Mexico around. And you have my word. I will serve as your governor, turn our state around, and I will not worry about I'm not a career in politics. I will do what's best for you. Thank you all so much for coming in and tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little weird because I'm answering your questions, but I'm not really talking to anybody, and I miss talking to people because I love talking to people. We will be back here again next Tuesday, and next week we'll talk about education. Please email us, communicate with us, sign up for us, and follow our campaign. Thank you all very much. God bless you. Have a great day and a great week.